life experiences in many ways. And I want to share that, some of the key highlights of that, how I came to this. So, you know, as you're sharing, like I grew up in India, you know, I was born in India, grew up there. And as as I reflect back on my life, Anjana, I kind of feel like there are three major phases that I think of, you know, as I kind of reflect back. So one is a time when I was growing up in India, and when I left India to come to the US, the first phase. And a couple of things strike out to me. You know, one was that, you know, I was very fortunate that I was born in a very supportive, progressive family. You know, parents they are wonderful. You know, I was second of four girls. And I studied engineering, you know, as a career, which still was very uncommon. You know, we didn't have a lot of women. So yes, I was very much trained to develop my mind, you know, and I was very clear that I wanted to be financially independent, have a career, and I was encouraged to do that. My parents encouraged me to be my own person. So that was sort of what I was going through from an outer perspective, so to say, right? My experience of growing up in India. But there was this inner side of me also that, you know, was developing. Mm-hmm. And while I shared with you that there was some aspects which were very positive for me, there were some aspects that impacted me in a not so positive way from an internal development standpoint. And one of the things I encountered was sort of the societal attitudes around women, around girls, and, you know, around stereotypes and what they can do, what they can't do. And even though my parents weren't necessarily fitting me in that box, there was this, you know, we're sensitive, we are human beings, we sense what's happening around us. Right. And so there was that pressure and that expectation that I was taking inside of myself. And what that did to me, as I reflect back, is it kind of helped me sort of take on much more of a strong, you know, I'm very competent, functioning, over-functioning kind of person, you know, that, yeah, I can do it, I can do everything.
You were trying to prove that you were competent and that you were worthy.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. And in the process, what I was not learning or didn't have the resources to learn is there is this other side to me as well that's very sensitive, very vulnerable, who feels afraid, who feels scared. Mm-hmm. It's okay, it's human to do all of that. You need to know how to process those things, right? Mm-hmm. Learn how to do that. So anyways, my inner part was developing where I was really not really focusing on some aspects of my emotions, but really focusing on how do I function and be really competent and prove myself, right? Mm-hmm. Then I come to the US, and US, actually there's one other thing which really impacted me quite dramatically, which has affected my future journey, is something I experienced as a teenager in India. Mm-hmm. And this was a very traumatic experience while I was in my first year of engineering school. I went through, let's say, strong harassment for 8 or 9 months at the hands of a few boys, 4 or 5 boys. And it was to the extent that it traumatized me very, very deeply. But what I did, I didn't really know how to deal with that very well that time, didn't know how to speak about it and get the resources, get the help. And so I repressed it. And so I had this big trauma that I was carrying along with me as I came to US, but honestly, I wasn't even aware, you know, that I was carrying that and how it was affecting me.
Right.
And so phase 2, I come to the US and, you know, of course, I pursue a master's in engineering, and I have a career in, you know, in a Fortune 100 company doing R&D, doing new product development. It was a lot of creative work in the technical area.
Right.
You know, so that was sort of a lot of the focus that I brought. And along with that, from an inner side, I was struggling in a marriage that wasn't working. And, so it was, yeah, the outer, I was able to create, control, manage, do all of that. But there was this inner part of me, which was, struggling. And it was in my 20s that when I first came to the US that I got in touch with my inner life through trying to figure out, how do I navigate this marriage that wasn't working? And that's when I sort of got the first inside deep look into myself through the help of counselors, through the help of marital counseling. And it started to give me more clarity into see my emotions, give me more clarity into my emotions.
So Niv, that was the first time that you actually started to tap into your inner self rather than, what we all focus on as we're growing up as being very functional people, contributing to society from an intellectual standpoint, and from a, even from a physical standpoint, but not really paying attention to the inside and what was really happening with the psyche.
Yeah, I think I feel, in all honesty, there were little bits and pieces happening before. It was very much on the surface. This was really the first deeper dive. And so, when I look back, I really feel that when you go through difficult times in life, that can be a huge avenue for growth if we channelize it, if we choose to use it that way.
Right.
And so I feel grateful that, the circumstance came into my life, the situation came, but I also got a lot of insight and clarity. And I did move out of the marriage and, and then let's just say that I entered sort of the third phase of my life where I started exploring life more, traveling, enjoying, trying to know myself. Who was I?
Yes.
What was I here for? And I'd say, that awakening was happening, but a lot of my focus was still outside, trying to build a career. I started business school full time, joined a company focused on innovation, creating new businesses, innovating with teams, leading teams, a lot of fulfillment was coming through work,
and a lot of success, actually, a lot of success, achievement.
Achievement. And along with that, the money comes in along, the financial part is very attractive too. But, I was beginning to notice around this time, sort of, in my third phase, that there was something missing inside of me when I would just sit, I would get so consumed in my work that after that, I would purposely not want to have much time to myself because I would feel like something was missing. It was really, really difficult to be just completely alone with myself.
Right.
I was finding it hard to connect with myself. And, around that time, there was some other situations that happened in my life, which opened this door for just finding avenues for how do I connect better with myself. And I actually found some resources for meditation. That was almost about 10 years back or so. And that probably along with some of the leadership development work that, I was doing in my previous company, how they were, and those help to some degree, they help you look in, but those leadership development programs are much more behavior focused. They're not so concerned about what's happening inside of you. Right. So long as you exhibit a certain kind of behavior, right? I mean, you're very well familiar with that yourself.
Yeah.
So I think it's the door opening. The meditation is really what opened the door for me to look into myself and sort of start relaxing my mind more, which was constantly, going on and on and on, thinking of this, wanting to do this, that.
Actually, you're not alone in that. I really feel like, the whole trappings of success and money and successful career is actually a trapping, because the trapping is that you're busy all the time, right? And I think we sometimes take pleasure in the fact that we're so busy. It feels
Absolutely.
great to tell people, "Well, I don't even have a minute to myself," you know. But I don't think that that actually leads to that fulfillment or that bliss or that happiness that we're all sort of looking for, and which seems just elusive, right?
Elusive.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Anjana. You said it. I mean, and on top of it, you feel so disconnected with yourself that it's hard to even figure out how do you start connecting? What does that connection feel like?
right.
And for me, meditation provided that way. And I honestly feel like, you know, I feel like meditation is such a miracle. It's sort of, we thought, oh, it's some big spiritual, da da da, who knows what are you doing when you're meditating, this and that. It is so simple. And, hopefully as we go through, we can do a little bit of meditation, but I kind of feel like it's a way to become your own best friend.
Mm,
It's a way for you to just sit with yourself in silence to know, well, what's happening inside of me? What's happening in my head? What's happening in my feelings? And just
it's reconnecting with yourself.
reconnecting with yourself. And so, kind of like phase three was, I'd say, probably a big part of this was this starting to reconnect with myself at a deeper level where, yeah, of course I was doing the exercising and work and all of that, but this became a real rejuvenating way
Hmm.
for me to connect with myself. And what happened, Anjana, I'd say probably 3 years back or so, is when my journey kind of took on maybe a much more accelerated trajectory, much more steeper trajectory. And um, situations happened which led me to go to India.
Hmm.
My mom was unwell. I was in India with her as she was healing. I was working in India, and the nature of the work I had was consulting primarily. It gave me an opportunity to find that time to go deeper in
Hmm.
myself and pursue more personal growth and just connect with my spirit more. And that took me traveling to around the world. Actually, it was a fantastic time where I traveled not only over India, across India. I went to Nepal. I went to many countries in Europe. In that
I'm
part.
very curious to know about your experiences in Denmark, and I know that you went to Tuscany in Italy,
Yeah,
and these were not just touristy destinations, but in fact connecting deeper into the collective sort of humanity, and the work which is happening actually in many parts of the world now,
yeah,
for that overall connectivity and harnessing the power of creativity, really. So can you
absolutely. I
talk a
mean,
little bit about the Amsterdam and the
yeah,
Denmark and the Tuscany experiences?
yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd say those are the three major ones for me. The one close to Amsterdam, it's actually a human development or human growth university. And they really focus on developing your heart,
Hmm.
and so the motto is love is the answer.
Hmm.
And so there I actually, you know, learned how to take off sort of the masks that I had put on, to sort of cope in the world.
Hmm.
So we develop a lot of defense strategies as we're growing up, and I one of the things for me was to learn to understand that those defense strategies also exist for a reason.
Right.
It's not that they're bad,
Hmm.
that, oh, something was wrong with you that you developed that. You develop them for a reason. You develop them because you need to survive in a particular environment and thrive as much as you can in an environment, right? But as you grow up, and where I was at when I was at this place is something wasn't working for me. Some of the strategies or defense strategies, they weren't allowing me to connect with who I was now and what the world was in front of me, what the environment was in front of me today,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot of things, working with a lot of other people. So there was a community of people who, some were like me, others were like experts in this area. where how do you get more and more in touch with your authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I'd say that that was my biggest learning there. And probably one other big one was to heal my trauma, the trauma that I shared with you I was carrying. I, you know, carried that for uh, 3 decades, believe it or not, Anjana.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that through this healing work that I was carrying intense anger at what happened to me. And there was the sense of outrage. There
Mm-hmm.
was a sense of humiliation and
Right.
sense of shame,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what that was doing, I didn't, not only did I heal that and release that, but also understood what it was doing to me.
Yeah.
And what it was doing to me, it was making me disconnected with my own feelings. I was numb to feeling myself. And what happens is when you, maybe this is a key thing I learned that I want to share, is that, you know, one of the things I learned, and I know many of us learn this is part of what, you know, how we get conditioned, is that certain emotions are good, other emotions are bad. For example, anger is not considered a good emotion across the world, right? We basically told, hey, just zip it, you know, don't show it, or deal with it, you know?
Right. Right.
And so what do? We either, we suppress it mostly into our unconscious, you know, we repress it. And so, but what, when you don't deal with your anger, process your anger in a constructive way, what
Right.
that does, it blocks you from feeling your heart, feeling love, feeling compassion, feeling kindness, because it's all the same energy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're kind of blocking and repressing one side of the energy, the other side of the energy is just not available to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we often
It's on
struggle.
the same continuum as what you're saying. The continuum
Exactly.
actually is, on one side you've got love, kindness, generosity,
Yeah,
and the other side of that is actually anger, guilt, and some of the things that you're talking about.
exactly.
And I just want to make one point here, that this is not limited to females, right? We're talking about the humankind, because I feel like men across the world have also gone through their own experiences, right? So this is not about male female thing. This is really about a human thing, that people
Absolutely,
experience
Anjana.
different things in different
Yeah,
cultures, in different countries, in different, surroundings. And so this has nothing really to do with just a female or male dynamic. This is really your human experience
absolutely,
that you go
Anjana.
through,
That's
and
a
the
very,
baggage
very,
that you hold, right?
yeah, I think that's a very important point for, you know, to understand and to bear in mind that in many ways, you know, while women have gone through sort of, you know, the experience of sort of blocking some of their emotions, men have gone through the same. In fact, men have gone through the experience of more of having to block most of their emotions, right? In fact, the pressure is even more so on them to, you know, be in a certain way and act in a certain way and not shed tears, and you know, there are all kinds of conditionings.
Mm-hmm.
And so in many ways, when you get on this healing journey, as I was, and I met a lot of men and women, you know, on that path, I found that women, because they naturally can get quicker back into their heart, sometimes it's a quicker process for them.
Mm-hmm.
Men, unless they really become conscious and aware of it, can really struggle with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even more.
Yeah.
So just having that attunement that this is a human issue, this isn't just a, you know, gender-based issue. Now, it may have different implications, different aspects might impact a woman versus a man more because of the certain conditionings or cultural expectations. That's possible, and that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I'd say, my experience in Amsterdam, and I'd say Denmark and Italy were very similar experiences in terms of healing
Mm-hmm.
myself in different aspects. You know, I kind of think about it as a onion layers, as you peel the layers of the onion. So you take the masks out, and then you kind of start dealing with your processing your emotions, then you start going deeper into understanding and processing. How do you connect more with your spirit?
Right.
You know, how do you get more centered and more sunk in? And ultimately, the biggest learning out of all of this for me was how to love myself, accept myself, just the way I am. Anjana, and this may sound very paradoxical, because isn't our, you know, in many ways, what we're trying to do is improve, we're trying to grow. But one of the things I learned is if you're focused on fighting something, that, oh no, I got to fix this. This is wrong in me. I got to fix this. If your energy is stuck there, then your energy is just, you don't have energy to work on anything constructive for yourself. So key is loving yourself and being kind and compassionate, understanding that some of the barriers and blocks that might have been developed in you, give them the light of understanding, give them the light of awareness, and give them the light of resources that, you know, you want to unfold them, you want to grow.
Right.
But treat them with kindness. Otherwise, you know, our energy gets stuck. I mean, that was a huge learning for me.
So what you're saying is that as human beings, we are enough as we are. That, you know, we have enough spiritual energy in ourselves, and that we are in ourselves enough, and that of course we will continue to have continuous improvement in the
Yeah,
world, and we will continue to be better people, but that that energy spent on constructive nature of knowing that you're enough and then building from that is a much more positive energy than getting stuck in the more negative sort of thought process. Now, can I
absolutely.
ask you a question related to your journey that you know, you worked in Fortune 100 companies, and you've been part of R&D, you've been part of innovation, which I have very deep sort of connection with as well, because with my background, I've worked with a lot of very brilliant people across, you know, different industries as well as in my own industry. And what I realize is that the innovation process, the process of creativity, the process of actually leading creativity is a very, it's not easy because you're trying to unharness or, you know, harness the untapped potential of people.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the work that you've done, and you know, is this something important for us really? Because many people who are listening to us are probably thinking, well, I'm not really broken. I don't really have, you know, that many issues to deal with. Does this really relate to me? But I
Yeah.
think on a deeper level, it's about, what I'm hearing from you is that it's about really the untapped potential in all of us to give a lot more back to our community, to the world, right? Whether it is through
Yeah.
innovation or through our everyday lives. So how do you think that that work that you've done manifests itself in what you've seen in you know, our companies across the world?
Yeah. 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 That's yeah. So, you know, like you, as you were saying, probably the one thing I've done most in my career is bringing, innovating,
Mhm.
right? Innovating myself, whether it's technically or whether it is innovating in business. Um, Doing it myself, doing it with groups leading. So yeah, I've done that, or maybe the one thing that I've done most in my career. Now, what I see today, or what my experience tells me, is the way we uh, do the innovation process is it's mostly, I'd say, coming from the mind. Okay, so it's coming from our thoughts. So what we're trying to do is, okay, we create certain scenarios. We try to think about, okay, how do I think about this situation differently? Okay, and we create triggers for that.
Yeah.
It's thinking oriented, it's mind oriented. And what we also do is we bring people in uh, to randomize it, right? Because mind typically it's linear.
Yeah.
right? So we try to randomize the process by bringing groups of people, kind of going through, we stick,
Brainstorming,
exactly,
post-its,
brainstorming, exactly,
adversity,
exactly.
brainstorming.
Yeah, you so kind of do all of that, right? And so there are some really progressive organizations who understand that very few, that people's emotions play a big role, right? And so, sometimes what they do, the way we approach this is that we try to bring nonlinear thinkers into the process, right? We try to bring creative people into the process.
Right.
But it's all around using the mind, right? So that's sort of how it works. Now, what's also happening in organizations is that, or across, not just across the world, automation, right? So the use of robots, the use of artificial intelligence algorithms, machine learning, you name it, right? So you can, I mean, our minds are memory banks. You can feed all of this memory or the mind things into these machines. And you can randomize it using 10, 100 different ways better than we humans can, and kind of come up with a very close or even better ideas than, groups of humans do using just the mind. Okay. So now, then you start thinking about this. The question that comes up is, the automation's only going to grow. And we're already seeing the impact of that, right, through in the world. It brings up the question, how are human beings going to bring a unique value? Okay, what is it about us that makes us different than machines or robots or artificial intelligence algorithms? So I feel, Anjana, with what I've learned, with what the dots that I've connected, what makes us, let's talk about what makes us human. Okay.
Yeah.
We know we have a body, a physical body. We're aware we breathe, right? We're at least aware of our breathing. We are aware of our minds. We're aware of our thoughts. We know we have a heart. How well connected we are with it, that's a different issue, right? So we kind of know this. We kind of know sort of the functioning, sort of say. But if you step back then and think about which are the centers, the capabilities of the humans. Well, there's one capability also that I haven't mentioned, and that is our life source. And what do I mean by the life source, Anjana? That's actually one of the centers that most of us are not even aware that we have, or we're not consciously aware, very few of us are. And that, what you may call it the soul, you may call it the consciousness, you may call it the intelligence, cosmic intelligence. Maybe you say that you call it that from sort of much more of a spiritual perspective, but we don't know if it exists from a scientific perspective.
Because you can't touch it, you can't see it, you can't, from a scientific standpoint, I mean, the reason why we are even relating to the mind, the brain, the heart, is because you can see it, you can feel it. But what you're talking about is actually the energy source, which is existing in all of us.
Exactly. And so how do people in today's world, like you were saying, it's got to be tangible. You've got to know it, right? So what we've lost and what we need to reconnect with is knowing and experiencing a life source here and now. And you and I will go through that and we'll experience it here and now. So it's not some esoteric thing out there, right? But the thing is that because we've not been given the tools and the resources and we don't even know it exists.
Right.
Forget about connecting with it. So coming back to sort of the innovation, kind of closing on to that aspect, what needs to happen really, if you want to bring humans to bring unique value, you've got to tap what's unique about them, what they bring that's different.
Right.
And what we're not tapping, we're tapping the minds today. We're not tapping our hearts, our emotions, our feelings, okay? And Anjana, we know this as a human being. You and I both know this. People who are listening to this know this. We know we feel, our feelings form such an important part of us. In fact, a lot of our decisions, it doesn't matter, we try to bring critical thinking and taking bias out, all of that's great. But our decisions primarily are driven a lot by our emotions and our feelings and our instincts. And there's this research to prove that now, right? And our attempt is to try to decouple it. That's fine, you try. But what I'm saying is reality is humans feel, and those feelings need to be, the more processed those feelings are, the more healthy and flowing those feelings are, more they can be unstuck from wherever they are and freed up for creativity and innovation. That is a huge part of the energy that's not being tapped today.
Right.
And finally,
so just one question related to that. So you're talking about now untapping a side of human potential that companies have not normally focused on. And I think it has to do with a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
We only have so much amount of time at work.
Yeah.
We're trying to get our tasks done in many cases. In many companies now, how you do things and not just what you do is important. So we've gotten to the stage of really understanding human behavior, right? And this is what you were talking about earlier, which is in our leadership programs, we're primarily focusing on behaviors, right?
Yeah.
How do you get stuff done as a leader? How are you leading your people, right? So that how has become really important as much as the what. So we're no longer task oriented. But now you're talking about another depth of work that corporations actually need to do. And this is where I think what you're setting up as a platform is really interesting to me, because this is now going beyond the what, the how, into the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is, why are human beings the way we are? So how do we, practically speaking, how do we unleash that power in companies, for example? And then I'll get to the you have to catch them young. So I'll get to the students and the teens and the work that you're doing with them. So let's talk about corporations first, and us adults who are trying to be, functional in these big organizations or small organizations for that matter.
Absolutely. So there's a sort of a, I think what's important, you're right. Organizations have a lot to deal with, right? And in fact, what we're talking about seemingly might feel like we're asking them to do more, whereas they're trying to do less. They're trying to cut, in the current circumstance. But here's why I think, why I feel strongly that corporations who would do something like this would be positioned for tremendous success. And I'll tell you why. Look at what's changing for organizations. First, let's take a step back, okay, before we can talk about this. Let's unpeel the layer of the onion there. We talked about automation. So the question then is, people that they hire, people that they're bringing in, what kind of, are they going to be able to bring unique value? And how are they going to develop that value? That's right? How are they going to develop that, right? Yeah. So it kind of goes into sort of this deeper how. Look at the how the how's working today. Like if you look at the leadership development situation. Well, I'm glad the kind of progress that's being made from a how perspective. But we also know, Anjana, that you can force fit somebody in certain behaviors, but if their inside is not aligned to that, either they will sabotage it, either they get sabotaged or they sabotage whoever they're leading.
Right.
And, you can ask yourself, I can tell you several examples about toxicity in organizations that exists because of a lot of unprocessed, repressed emotions people are walking around carrying, but putting on masks and behaving a certain way because they know that's what they need to demonstrate in order to get ahead. But
That's
in
right.
real,
And it shows up as a lack of trust in most cases.
exactly, think about the morale of the employees, the leadership, and ultimately, Anjana, we know this. It shows up in the company's performance.
That's
It
right.
shows up in the company's brand, how much they're going to be able to pull people in. And then you have to look at the current generation, the new generation of leaders or newer generation of people that they need to be bringing in on board. Uh, and we can talk more about this later on, but you've got to make your corporation attractive enough for them to thrive as who they are as people. They're bringing themselves to your company. I think this whole idea about you have to fit in a certain box has to be completely rethought by
Hmm.
companies. And it manifests in many different ways. Hiring criteria, development criteria, how they organize their structures criteria, how they innovate, how they work with their customers, you name it, Anjana. It's got
Hmm.
broad implications. So then coming back to how do organizations do something like this when they're feeling suppression and supplanted? So I feel like they need to really understand the climate in which business is going to be done, what
Hmm.
needs to happen today and going forward. How's the world changing? So they've got to come to terms with it. It's not business as
That's
before
right.
anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right.
So you've got to look at that, and then you've got to think about, okay, well, these are my resources. How am I going to prioritize my resources? What are the areas I have to develop? And I feel that if you're not developing your programs to tap into the fuller potential of an employee who's coming in, who's, by the way, spending literally their entire day split in chunks now working for you. It's sort of become part of their life. Either, Anjana, how people work is going to change, or companies would have to change to bring them in, or maybe it's going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah. And I think
So,
that's leading us to the next topic, really, which is that, there's a whole generation of kids today who
yeah,
are, in their primary, secondary school, area, and many of them are now graduating college through this very difficult time. Many of them may not have jobs going forward. Many may be having families that don't have jobs, and are, critically looking at their future and
yeah,
obviously deciding where they want to be. So in this new world that we are entering post-pandemic, I think we can call it before coronavirus and after coronavirus now, instead of BC and AD. Um, so in this new sort of world that we're entering, what's your suggestion for teens and for young adults who are looking to build their lives? And obviously, I think this generation, the younger generation, obviously has grown up in a different way as compared to the previous generations, which is not nothing new. Our generation was very different than our parents or grandparents' generation. So in order for the future to be attractive and for them to continue innovating as they would in this new world of AI, automation, and other sort of machine learning and adoption
yeah,
within the world, what advice would you give them to harness their power? Because they're going to be faced with it more probably
yeah.
than all of us. We're probably going to continue to sort of evolve ourselves, but I think the new generation obviously will have to deal with it a lot more. So, what's your advice for parents and for these young adults and teens to develop themselves in a different way and to seek out organizations that actually support that development as well?
Yeah, that's a very, very vital question. And I feel like our children, the young adults, the kids who are being born now or teens, in many ways, Anjana, I feel like the kind of complexity that they're dealing with is, more than we dealt with when we were growing up. And given that we're dealing with it now, but then we also have this perspective from that we're bringing along, but they really don't have a lot of, perspective. And so that's good and bad both, because I think the good piece is that they're much more open and much more receptive, right? And so I think I feel like as I've been working with teenagers, as I've been working with young adults in universities, I feel that the opening for them to understand that they're more than just their minds is much more. So that who are they? They've got a heart, they've got a life source. How do they connect with that? How do they think about more than just themselves? How do they think about the environment that they're in? How do they think about climate? How do they think about, the consciousness level, I feel, the receptivity level, by and large, I feel is much more the social consciousness, or the desire for that is much more. And I feel like this is, it's absolutely urgent now to tap into that receptivity. And in many ways, I feel like we have to develop them as leaders for the world that they're in today and what's coming. And for that, I feel like parents have to be on board, obviously. And that's where, for parents to maybe think about this from a few different perspectives, where that opens them up if they're not feeling as receptive to, oh, well, what is all of this?
Niv, what are the resources that you would suggest for parents? Because I think, look, I have 2 kids, and I can tell you that it's sometimes you are bombarded with a lot of information. You don't always know what is a reliable place to go to get information about bringing your children up with their creativity, enlightened, as well as supporting them in their emotional journey, listening to them, making sure that you're sort of supporting their development in this particular area. So I have 2 questions are coming out. One, what resources for parents? What resources for teens? And I know that your IN-OUTAbundance is trying to actually collate a lot of these resources so that across the world that you can provide that sort of support if people are seeking it.
Yeah, absolutely, Anjana. I mean, that is the whole mission for IN-OUTAbundance, to make this a practical way of moving along this path. How do you relax your mind? How do you strengthen your heart? And how do you tap into your life source? So I'd say that programs that, certainly workshops and resources that IN-OUTAbundance would provide is completely, customized for this purpose. There are other resources as well. I would say that meditation is a huge resource for relaxing the mind. Okay, and there are really good programs out there. So if like Art of Living I know in India offers some really good programs. Sadhguru offers some good programs there. Osho, through Osho's work, who's an enlightened master as well, there are beautiful meditations available. And honestly, this can be as simple as 10 minutes to 15 minutes of meditation every day. Okay, and I'll share one meditation that we're going to do. Maybe we do it right after the segment, Anjana, to feel it out, what that looks like. So that's one. I think the other one is around personal growth and emotional growth. That's a huge area. And I would say that certainly some of the avenues that I've just spoken about offer programs there. But let's also tap into our psychiatrists, our counselors, the holistic centers that many of the hospitals are starting to provide. The universities are providing some of these resources as well. I know that many progressive universities are. Look into those programs.
It's interesting that you say that, because there's a primary school in the UK that I was reading about, that actually has brought in meditation and yoga for their elementary school students.
Okay.
So when you enter class 1 or class 2, they already are taught yoga as well as meditation. And
Yeah.
it may seem really like an Eastern philosophy to a lot of our Western friends, and there's a lot of skepticism around whether or not people want to undertake this. I see it more as a life source training rather than a religious affiliation, right? Because you could be any religion, but the life source for all of us is the same. And tapping into that through meditation, through yoga, and some of the other exercises, even though they originated, in the East, have a lot of merit across the world.
Anjana, maybe one thing I'd like to also highlight along the same lines of what you're saying is that we have to understand that, you know, maybe this is a good time to talk about science and spirituality and how we generally have thought about it, but what needs to shift there. So science is really like moving outside, right? It's like proving things tangible, experiments, with using the mind. So using the analytical mind. So you break down things, you prove it, right? And that's science. And science actually is sort of the world of what's known and what is maybe knowable. You may not know it yet, but it's knowable, right?
Right,
So,
right.
So there's a quest towards, okay, now we got to move there. And also remember that when science answers a question, it does not become cast in stone. A next scientist comes along and they, find something else and the whole.
Yeah, it's a hypothesis.
Right?
You prove
Exactly.
it. You may have other hypotheses, right?
So now let's talk about spirituality. Uh, Spirituality is the science of the inner. It's moving inside, okay? Whereas if you think about science is moving out, spirituality is moving in. It's understanding the architecture of your inner being. And it is also, so here's the difference between how I see difference between belief and experience. Some of the reasons why, people across the world, East, West, anywhere, we feel kind of hesitant about some of the inner sciences is because we kind of feel, oh, that takes us into religion, right? It may be Hinduism or Buddhism or Christianity, whatever. The reality is, Anjana, that what we're talking about, the difference between sort of how I see spirituality and religion is spirituality talks about experience, experiencing it, not believing it. Okay, so don't take something because it's written in a book that this is how it is. You take it and you believe it and you run with it. Well, the thing is that in today's world, we're not prepared to do that. Our minds have shifted. We've become much more analytical, and we're not just going to take something written down and just run with it, right? I think that's healthy. We've got to be able to be curious. We got to be able to question. We got to be able to be on a search on our own to find out. And that's where spirituality takes you, because spirituality is an invitation to come and experience. Do not believe that exists, a life source or soul or, an inner or this and that. Come, taste it, try it, see for yourself, experience for yourself. So I think this is the approach to take, where then you start thinking about that the West has done a lot of work in the outer sciences, right? A lot of technologies, advancements have been done, a lot of innovations been done. Well, East has done a lot of innovation in the inner sciences, whether it's through yoga, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through, thousands of years of, sciences developed for the inner, the healing sciences, the restorative sciences. The issue has been, Anjana, to talk about it in a way, to blend this in a way that it becomes an experience for us that we can live here and now practically in our lives.
Yeah,
I would just want to maybe reiterate that the this whole idea of creating abundance inside the human being so that that can be created in the outside is really the key. And when I say abundance, what I mean is the sense of joy, the sense of overflowing, and not coming from a space of scarcity. Okay, and this whole area of tapping into the human potential beyond just the mind is key for creating this inner joy and abundance and centeredness. And that then naturally manifests on the outside for the kind of breakthrough innovation we need. We need to be able to have reverence for life, how we connect with each other, how we connect with the environment. And that can't be forced. It has to be a feeling that has to come from within us. So we need to create the resources in the environment for that to be able to manifest in the world. So that really, I mean, human beings can thrive in an environment which is rich and abundant and full of technology and comfort on the outside, but it's giving them the restorative, joyful sense of being able to enjoy that and connect with that and connect with something bigger than themselves along with that as well.
Yeah.
So I want to just end with that. And I also would like to thank you again and thank existence and all the enlightened beings and evolved leaders, mentors, guides that have inspired me, that have helped me open myself, see the light and within myself. And I'd like to also thank my parents, because I wouldn't be here where I'm at. And I've still more to go, but my parents have been a huge part of my journey. Their support and love means a lot to me.
Thank you, Nivedita. This was an amazing conversation, and I certainly don't think that this is the end of our conversations. I'm sure that we will have many more. There are so many things I would like to delve into that we weren't able to get to in this particular session. So, so thank you so much for your, again, for participating in the journey of life and to share your insights of what you've learned in your journey. So with that, why don't we practice what we've been talking about, which is the meditation? And would you say 5 minutes?
I'd say that let's take about 2 minutes to just have me just share what we'll do, and then let's practice it for 5 minutes.
All
Is
right.
that okay?
Wonderful. Yeah, let's do that.
So what we're going to do is a meditation that was developed by Buddha, Gautam Buddha, 2,500 years back. It's called Vipassana. And meditation is watching, it really involves watching your breath. So what we'll first do is, actually, why don't I just guide us through it, and we start doing it as a guide? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then maybe I can comment a little bit about the meditation towards the end after we're done.
That's fine.
Okay. So I would invite you, Anjana, to close your eyes, sit comfortably with your maybe your hands on your thighs, palms facing up, and breathe deeply into your belly like you're blowing into a balloon. Let's do that 3 times. And as you're doing that, just feel a relaxation come into your body. Feel your legs are relaxing. arms are relaxing, and your breath is relaxing. And as you come into this present moment with your full attention, I would invite you to feel the chair on which you're seated and feel your legs firmly, your feet firmly planted on the ground. And feel like there is a force pulling you from your seat down into the earth. So this is grounding force pulling you down. Feel that. And as you relax into that, I would invite you to bring your attention to your nostrils and take a deep breath in, an inhalation, and follow that breath as closely as you can with your awareness, with your attention. And it'll go down to your navel area somewhere. Just follow that inhalation all the way down to your navel area. And see that it pauses there and it turns and becomes an exhalation. Follow that exhalation as closely as you can. And bring it, let it come back to your other nostril. Notice there's a pause again, and the breath turns and becomes an inhalation. So this is what we're going to practice. We're going to breathe in, inhale, follow that breath closely as it's moving down in your body to your navel area. It pauses and it turns. Follow that exhalation out to your nostril. It pauses and it becomes an inhalation. Okay, so let's do this. So let's inhale. Keep following that breath to your navel. See it turn. Watch it. Follow it as it comes out. Notice there's a pause and an inhalation again. Follow that inhalation. Notice the pause, the turn of the breath. Comes out. Pause. Inhale. Let's do this. See your breath move in this circle. Inhalation. Pause. Exhalation. Pause. Inhalation. Pause. exhalation. So I'm not going to speak for a minute. I'll let you do this. Feel your breath, watch your breath, and in particular, watch those pauses for however fraction of a second they might be for. Let's do this for a minute. And if your mind moves here and there, just gently bring it back to your breath. We want your 100% attention to be on watching your breath, your inhalation and exhalation, and the pauses. Go as slow as you can, but very watchful. Don't let your breath get away from your watching. Let it flow naturally and let your watching move with it. Now I would gently ask you to bring your attention back to me. And before I just share some key points about this meditation, is this something you'd like to share, Anjana? How was it for you?
Thank you for leading us through a very sort of quietening and time to connect to ourselves. We talked about it for the vlog, but I think it was important for us to experience that. I think any time that you can focus on sort of your natural life breath, it brings you in touch with yourself. And the mind, which is always racing, essentially needs to quieten down. And it's a great way to bring focus in your life. It's a great way to quieten yourself. And it's a great way to really experience the bliss of breathing and the oxygen which is going in, which is really the scientific portion of this, that we're actually oxidating each and every cell in our body, right? So it was wonderful as always, Niv, and thank you for leading us through that.
Thank you for sharing how it was for you, Anjana, and your thoughts about how meditation makes you feel. A few things I'd like to mention about this meditation and kind of connect it with what we talked about. So we talked about a body, relaxing a body. We talked about connecting with a breath.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about relaxing our hearts, connecting with our hearts, and the life source. So what I want to highlight here is that when I asked you to focus on the pauses, when you were going in the breath, inhalation, out. So the pauses are the most mysterious points.
Mm-hmm.
And those pauses, if you think about it, you're not breathing in those pauses. Okay, even for a fraction of a second, you're not breathing, but you're still there.
Mm-hmm.
So those who've known mystics and like Buddhas, enlightened beings, those who've known, they've actually become enlightened. Buddha became enlightened by doing this practice. For us, where we are at, even noticing that in those pauses, we are not breathing, yet we are.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this life beyond the breath.
Mm-hmm.
The breath is what connects us to our body, and we know the body is going to die, the breath's going to die. But what is that, the doorway and the pause and those pauses where we are even when we're not breathing?
Mm.
That is the mystery. That is what you call the soul, the consciousness, if you're receptive to that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, that's okay too. But it should make you curious. What is it? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
How are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Without breathing?
Without breathing. Mm.
Well, you're not breathing.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? You're still very much there. And that's, so for people, I'd say this is an invitation to be curious, to be courageous,
Mm-hmm.
to explore who you are, this magnificent being that we are with these multitude of capabilities. We are way more than our minds. We way more than just this beehive buzzing with thoughts constantly and driving us crazy. It's got a role to play. It's got a very important role to play, but we are overworking our minds and not using the other capabilities that we've been given as gifts. That's my invitation.
Thank you. Thank you, Niv. Beautiful invitation, and we shall continue, I'm sure, in the future with that invitation as well. But thank you very much for being here today. It was a real pleasure to talk to you about your journey. And again, thanks, and I hope that everybody has a great day.
Thank you so much, Anjana, and all the best for this initiative. I'm so excited to see the future journeys that we're going to learn about. And thank you for inviting me and letting me share mine.
Thank you.